Welcome to The Whole Story. My name is Rachel Egboro. I am the founder and the director of The Whole Story, which is a platform for Black people and the stories. So tonight is a new offering that we've created. It's called The Whole Story One-on-One, where we dig deep into one story that has been featured on The Whole Story show. And then we also get to know the storyteller a little bit more and see how their story fits into their life as a whole. So joining me tonight is Angelica Lindsey-Ali for our debut one-on-one, and I'm going to share her bio with you in just a moment. So Angelica Lindsey-Ali is a daughter of Detroit dancer. She's a dancer, she's a writer, shapeshifter, and Afrofuturist. She's a cultural activist who has traveled the world, finding bits of herself strewn across the globe. As the Village Auntie, she leads a global movement of hundreds of women from over 86 countries who come together to learn about spirituality and sexuality, her two favorite topics. Angelica spends her free time sharing tidbits of her life on the local storytelling scene in Phoenix at events like The Whole Story, Final Voices, The Storyline, Barflies, and Nasty Woman Reading. She is also the host of the Moth's monthly Story Slam in Phoenix. So we'll hear from Angelica in a bit, but first I wanted to share with you the story that she shared on The Whole Story. She shared this at the Phoenix Art Museum during the Whole Story's 7th show, The Whole Story Part 7, on Friday, September 7th, 2018. So I'm really grateful that she's back here with us to dig deep into her story after this. So I know that a lot of you are interested in what Angelica is doing and also in her own storytelling process. So after the show of her story, I'm going to ask her a couple of questions. We'll have a little conversation, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A from the audience. So be ready with your pens and pencils to come with your questions and then leave with some answers. So right now, we're going to share Angelica's story, which she told on The Whole Story show, called Ajnabi.
On March 3rd, 2011, I left my apartment in Tempe, Arizona with 2 children, 4 boxes, 9 suitcases, and moved to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, the jewel of the Red Sea. Now, of all of the places that I ever wanted to visit or live in my life, Saudi Arabia did not even make the list. But my husband found an English teaching opportunity in Jeddah, and he decided to go. Now, I told him I'm not going at all. And that lasted for a good 6 months. And I was tired of the single parenting by choice thing, so I decided to pack up my children and move to Jeddah. I had a full life in Tempe. I was a nonprofit program director, a jewelry designer, had lots of friends. So I decided if I have to live in Saudi Arabia, I was going to be a lady who lunched. I get massages, get my nails done. And that lasted for about 5 weeks before I got bored. My husband had a friend who had a wife who needed an English teacher at her American curriculum school, and she asked me. Now, I had taught in America for many years, and I decided, why not get back in the classroom? So I show up for the interview, and I come to find that she's a South African woman. Now, she's colored, not colored by American standards, but in South Africa, you have Black people like me, you have white people, and you have colored people. Those are the people who sort of fall in between. And that's what Dalal was. And she was a native English speaker, and she needed someone who could teach the high school English class. The teacher that they had, she couldn't handle the children. And I'm from Detroit. I taught in inner city schools in Detroit, and I taught in South Phoenix. I was like, I got you. And I got the job, and I loved it. It was an all girls school. Boys could come up to grade 3, and teachers could take their hijabs off in school. It gave me an opportunity to interact with Saudi women. It was great. So I show up on the first day of school, and the students, they loved me. They were from all across the Gulf, all across the Middle East. It was fantastic. But I was a bit of a disappointment. You see, both me and Dalal, my South African friend, we were considered ajnabi, foreigners. But I was a disappointment as an American because I was Black. But I made it my mission to turn them around to my side. And I did a good job. So I took the job in April. And by June, the owner of the school invited me to be the head of department. I like to say HOD. So I got to be the HOD of the early primary department in charge of 400 students. Now, this was a big job. So I spent all summer preparing, and I decided that I would greet all of the students on the first day of school by standing on the curb. You know how American principals do? They welcome all the kids into the school on the first day. So I stood out there in my abaya saying, "Good morning, marhaba, assalamu alaikum." And all of the parents looked at me like I was a little crazy. Of course, they were all men because at that time, women couldn't drive in Saudi Arabia. And then one of the parents got out and he threw his children's backpack at my feet. I said, "Oh, you must not have had your coffee this morning." And he said something in Arabic and he drove off. Then it happened again. And I didn't know what I was doing to make them upset until one of the Dadas rushed up. Now, Dada is an Arabic word that loosely translated means sister. But Dada is also another word for maid. And all of the maids at our school were African. They were from places like Ethiopia, Chad, Nigeria, Somalia. And she came rushing out. She picked up the backpack and she said, "Miss," and it looked like she wanted to say something. And she stopped. She turned around and she left. Then my administrative assistant, a Jordanian woman, walked up and she said, "Miss Angelica, you should not be out here. The parents won't understand." And then that's when I got the idea that the parents were throwing backpacks at my feet because they thought I, a Black woman, was a maid. Now, being confused for a maid, it didn't bother me. But what did bother me is that I made my sister, the Dada, look bad because she got shouted at by the principal for not standing outside and taking the bags instead of me. So I was not making any friends. But my classroom was great. You see, even though I was still the head of department, I also taught English because even though I was a disappointment as a foreigner, they could not deny my credentials. I was the only English teacher who could teach Shakespeare, Sylvia Plath. I knew that Southern Gothic was a literary style and not a form of dress. They could not touch me in that department. And my students loved me. That classroom was like my cocoon. So since I was in an all-American school and I could take my scarf off, one day, I finally had the nerve to take it off for the very first time in class. I had my head down grading some essays. And when I looked up, all of these girls were standing around my desk. "Oh, miss, mashallah, helwa, helwa." And they wanted to touch my head. And I was feeling kind of good, kind of like Beyonce a little bit. So I was feeling so great, I decided to keep it off for the rest of the day. But when I exited the classroom and I entered the playground, all I heard was laughter. So I rushed into the bathroom to check to make sure everything was okay. I looked in the mirror. There I was, bald head, orange lipstick, saucer sized earrings. I was still straight. Now, even though I no longer stood on the curbside to accept backpacks, I still made it my mission to visit every classroom every day. And even though boys could go to the school up to grade 3, they were still separated from the girls. So the very first classroom next to the bathroom was the boys' 3rd grade class. I opened the door, "Assalamu alaikum, good morning." And all of the boys took one look at me and they said, "Wa alaikum salam, ya Ustaz Kabir." They laughed. I didn't. They saw the look on my face because even though I couldn't speak Arabic, I understood it enough to know that they had just called me, "Hey, big fat male teacher." So I wasn't making any friends with the 3rd grade boys either. So I walked to the lunchroom. This was the teacher's lounge. It was the only place in the school where you could speak Arabic. I still had my scarf off because I was not about to let some 3rd grade boys steal my thunder. When I walked in, I took out my lunch, jerk chicken, jollof rice, fried plantain, and I opened it up and I started eating it. And then I heard the teachers whispering, "What is that food? What is that smell? Why does she look like that? Does her husband know her hair is that short?" Now, I told you I can understand Arabic and I can't speak it. That's not really true because I could speak it, but only at a kindergarten level. So it wasn't until 5 p.m. that night that I had the answers to all their little questions. My food smells like this because I like to put smoked fish in my jollof rice. And of course, my husband knows what I look like, and he is the one who cut my hair. No friends with the Dadas, No friends with the third grade boys, no friends with the teachers. But for some reason, the owner of the school, Mr. Noman, he loved me. And he had spent time in America. And he came to me, he said, Miss Angelica, I want you to be in charge of Wacky Day. Now, Wacky Day was a huge event at the school. It was kind of like a Muslim Halloween, but without the pagan symbolism. You get the costumes and the candy. So I picked the theme outer space because I'm a diehard Afrofuturist. And I figured this was my chance to shine. If I'm going to go out, I'm going out in a blaze of glory. So I got everything prepared. And on the morning of, all of the students, the teachers, the parents, they all show up in these costumes. They're superheroes, aliens, little green men running everywhere. And here I show up, the big ajnabi teacher with no hair and a black abaya and a black hijab. Now, everybody looks so disappointed, like, man, she's American. She can't even get this right. So by that time, I had made friends with the one Dada from Chad who spoke English. And I said, Fatum, I'm going to my office. I'm going to close the door. Don't let anyone come in for 20 minutes. And she said, yes, miss, I got you. And 20 minutes later, I emerged from my office. And it was just like the first time that I entered that playground with my hijab off, except this time, instead of hearing laughter, all I heard was gasps. Wow, look at Miss Angelica. Oh my goodness. You see, because I had selected to come as a Fela queen. I was from planet Calacuta, Calacuta Republic, Fela Kuti, By that time, my bald head had grown into a TWA. I had red ostrich feathers positioned just so that it was like a mohawk. Half my face was blue, half my face was red. I had managed to find some royal blue lashes at the local souk. I had white dots all over my face. I had cross beads and bangles. You couldn't tell me a thing. And when we got out to the playground, everyone was just like, wow. And I had even organized my grade 12 girls to do a flash mob to an Afrobeat song. We got up on the stage and we danced and we grooved because I figured if I'm going out as the big, fat, bald-headed American teacher who's bringing smelly food to school, I'm going out in a blaze of glory. And as soon as we finished that dance, I expected laughs, I expected gasps, but all I heard was applause. Yes, Miss Angelica. Wow. The third grade boys were cheering because I figured out that the way to their hearts was teaching them Wu-Tang lyrics and the mechanics of a good jump shot. The African Dadas were like, yes, Africa. Even all the teachers were like, la, 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 Miss Angelica. It was fantastic. And then there was this one teacher. She was so strict. She never took her scarf off in school. In fact, she even covered her face in front of the other women. As soon as I got off the stage, she pulled me to the side. She said, Miss Angelica, come here. I said, oh, here we go. She said, Miss Angelica, can you teach me? I said, what is that? Kida. I said, oh, you want me to teach you how to shake your booty? Of course I can. It was a great moment. The Dadas pulled me into one of the bathrooms and said, Miss Angelica, you told us you're from America, but you move like you're from Africa. You have to tell people you're from Chad. No, she has to tell people she's from Ethiopia. The French teachers at the neighboring school came over and they heard about it. Senegal, Cape Verde, Mauritania. We all wanted you to be our sister. It was a great moment. I had gone to Saudi Arabia thinking that I had to morph into a different version of who I was, but all I had to do was be myself. And Wacky Day was so successful, and my teaching was so successful that I stayed another 9 semesters at the school. In October 2015, I moved back to Tempe, Arizona, this time with 4 children, because there's not a lot to do in Saudi Arabia, a whole lot more suitcases, and a new family in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, a family that I still keep in touch with to this day. Most of my students have graduated from college. Some are married. A couple are about to have babies. And one of them calls me every now and then. And on our last conversation, she said, Miss Angelica, after you left the school, we still had Wacky Day and it was fun, but it was never as good as when you hosted it.
Yay, Angelica. Thank you for that story. I'm going to bring you on right now so we can chat. Welcome everyone. This is Angelica Lindsey-Ali, our storyteller. Thanks for being here for the one-on-one.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, me too, especially to ask you all my really curious, digging questions.
Ready, I'm ready.
What I love about the story is that it's the classic story structure. We've got the hope at the beginning, everything's great, you're going to Saudi Arabia. There is some hesitation. I know in the story you shared live, you talked about your experience with Arabs previously and being from Detroit, how you kind of had some discomfort. Can you talk more about that?
So growing up in Detroit at the time, I'm not sure if it's true now, but Detroit was home to the largest Arab population outside of the Middle East. So I grew up with Arab Christians and also Arab Muslims. And I remember wearing a verse from the Quran, Ayatul Kursi, around my neck. And every time I would come in, I didn't know a lot of Arabic. The gas station owner would call me Abid, and that's another word for slave, and I never knew that. But he would always ask me, like he would try to quiz me, like, am I really a Muslim? He would ask me to recite Fatiha, which is the first, opening of the Quran. They would sell liquor and things, and like some of the people would sell, say lewd things to girls in the neighborhood. So I didn't really have a good interaction. And unfortunately, as a teenager, I formed my opinion of Arabs from those negative circumstances. And I'm so glad that I had an opportunity to realize that that wasn't representative of everybody. Those were just some jerks that were at the gas station.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One interaction with one group of people doesn't mean that the whole people is like that. So that's a really, really great observation, and definitely part of the mission of the whole story to expand specifically Black narratives. So you start out with this hope, you get this job and you are promoted to being the HOD, and you're excited, and we're with you, we're rooting for you, and then backpacks are being thrown at you, and then we start to lose that hope, and it starts to kind of go back, from the parents, the kids, and the teachers. Everyone just seems to be against you, and that's classic story structure of taking us through that conflict and these waves of highs and lows. So what I really love is when you bring up Wacky Day, and that's like the climax to me, where everything comes to this head, where you've put everything on the line, you've come out as this fellow queen, and you just have this, dread of what people are going to say. But I love how you just sink into who you are and just embrace completely everything that you love and everything that you are, and just put it out there for everyone to receive. And, fortunately it was received well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, it was interesting because at that point I felt like I didn't have anything left to lose. I was certain that I was not going to come back to the school after that, because the owner of the school, he loved me so much, and his wife was the headmistress of the girls section, and they both just really loved me and embraced me so much. But I didn't work with them every day. I worked with the parents and the teachers and the kids, and I was the only African American that some of them had ever met. And I was just this like walking caricature of an American to them. And I figured, if I got to go out, I'm going out on Wacky Day. And I just pulled out all the stops and just made it a thing.
Yeah. And I heard, on the recording of the story, when you told it live, you actually said that there was a picture that you would show if we were nice to you. So hopefully you think we're nice, and you'll put it on your social media later today or tomorrow. Okay, everyone go and flood Angelica's social media and just ask her for that picture of her as a fellow queen so we can see the proof. But, I believe you. Like, all the stories told on the whole story are true.
They are. And it's like a little sliver of my face, but you can see the feathers, you can see the dots, you can see the eyelashes. So, yeah.
Yes, I'm very excited for this. The other theme of this that gets to the deeper point is this theme of identity. Even when you talked about connecting with the Saudi Arabs in Detroit, and they would quiz you and question you about your identity, and then getting to Saudi Arabia, and you're trying to fit in and just kind of mold yourself to what everyone's expectations are until you're finally like, forget this, I'm just going to be myself. That speaks to something that I think all of us, Black, white, whatever, we all can identify with. But there was something really powerful when you said the sisters, when you talked about the Dada saying, no, you're from our country, you're Nigerian, you're this, you're that, we claim you. And being African American, can you talk more about that feeling of being claimed?
So it had happened before in Phoenix. I have friends who are Senegalese and they're Fulani. So they had claimed me and said, anywhere you go, you tell them you're from Senegal. But, these are people that I knew. So being around these Dadas, some of whom, that their English was tenuous at best, that feeling that they wanted to claim me as their sister. And literally from that day on, like they treated me as one of their own. It just meant a lot to me because it helped me to see the common thread that we share as people of African descent. Like the diaspora is very vast, it's very large, but there's a thread that Blackness like connects people. And I just love that so much. And Fatum was someone who I just took an immediate liking to her. We had an immediate kinship, and she's somebody that to this day, like she'll hit me up on WhatsApp, like, hey, look at me, miss, I look like Beyonce. She's so like, I really feel like she's my sister. So that meant a lot to me. They would share their dishes from their home country with me. One of them said, we like smelly food too. It's like she would bring me like smoked fish and things like that. So it was a great experience.
Can we just say smelly food is the best food? I mean, if it doesn't have a smell, like how are you going to know if it tastes good?
Listen, I need my food to have a fragrance. That's just it. So yeah.
I could just imagine you sitting in the lunchroom and enjoying your food, and everyone's like, oh, what does that smell? And you're just like, you want a piece of this. So
but they got me back, or I got them back, because later on at the end of the year they had mandi, and mandi is like a Saudi dish with lamb and rice. And so they brought up these big platters, and it was literally an entire lamb, head, everything, just on top of some rice. And I was like, y'all are bringing a whole carcass on a platter, but y'all talked about my smoked fish. I'm gonna need you to stop. Yes, it is delicious, but y'all put a goat head in front of me.
That's a problem.
It was something we could all laugh and joke about, and eat. And they wound up trying, the jollof rice and things later. So it wound up all coming full circle.
So speaking of jollof rice, and everyone that's viewing, please feel free to put your questions in the chat, because we're going to move on to Q&A next. Any questions you have about Angelica or her story or the storytelling process. Speaking of sisterhood, so on Facebook, you had announced, I think you even tagged me about some results that you got. Would you be willing to share those results here?
So I did African ancestry DNA test, and I'm still floored by the result. The results showed that at least one of on my maternal side, one of my grandmothers was Yoruba from Nigeria. So like, I gotta like wave the flag. What is it? October? Is it October 1st? Is Nigerian Independence Day? I think.
Someone respond and let us know.
I need to.
I know it's coming up this fall
and everything. Yeah. So I officially claim the Nigerian people.
Yes, and we claim you too. Oh, Daija. Yes. The fella queen. I feel like your title should have been fella queen or blaze of glory, all those things. Yeah.
I actually just got a box set of fella vinyl. There are 10 records. Erykah Badu picked her favorite fella albums, and somebody sent me a box set. So my son, my 5-year-old, and I were just dancing to Coffin for Head of State this weekend. So yeah.
Yes, and folks confirmed October 1st is Nigerian Independence Day, so we will celebrate
Yes.
And the green and white and green again.
Yes.
So while we wait for some more questions to come in, I was curious why the principal picked you for Wacky Day. Was it just your air, your style? You said it was a big honor, and even though you weren't very popular, you were still picked for this big honor. Was there pushback against that?
So I don't think there was pushback. I think there was like a little bit of jealousy from some of the other teachers that I got picked, because in Saudi Arabia at the schools, they do a big activity at least once a month. So to be picked to head a school, and this was a school-wide activity. So it wasn't just for kindergarten to third grade. It was literally every student in the school. So like 600 students. And it was a huge honor. And I never asked him why he picked me, but I remember him telling me once, he said, you know, Miss Angelica, you have a boldness about you. He's like, and I don't think it's because you're American. I just think it's because you're you. There's just something about you. You know, you're a little crazy, but you're brilliant. And I think that's why we like you so much. And he had spent a lot of time in the UK. He had spent a lot of time in the US. He had been trading and doing land deals for his mother since he was like 14 years old. So he was like very, very worldly. His mother's well-traveled. So I think for him, I wasn't strange, but he knew that I was different. And I feel like he wanted to infuse a little bit of that difference into the school. And his wife, I feel like, was the same way. She was the total opposite of me in every way. Like she wore, you know, the face veil. She was very, very modest, very, very quiet, but she loved African dance. She loved everything about it. So I think there was just something in me that they saw that they wanted to bring to the school. So
that's beautiful. Got a question from Jeremiah. What about the music and dance made the connections between you and the locals, not so much the food?
I think it's because, you know, West African food, especially Nigerian, Ghanaian food, it's heavily spiced, and the spices are different than what they're used to in Saudi Arabia. A lot of the food that we ate in Saudi was, it was very good, but it was just different. And, you know, smoked fish, it don't smell good. Right? So it's kind of like, how can you eat something that smells so bad? And I think the dance really attracted people, because what a lot of people don't know is the Gulf, the Khaliji countries, they have a huge tradition of this drum-based music. And so when they were hearing the drumming and the music, that resonated with them. And then, you know, I don't care what culture you're from. If you see some West African dance, you get excited. Like you don't have to be from Africa to love it. So I think they really resonated with the music, and then they also liked the dance because it was very lively. And and they had never seen me dance before, and they were like, "So I told you I was a dancer," you know. So it was kind of like seeing your teacher out of her element. It was the same thing.
Great. Yes. Thank you. Question from Ebony. Can I have the deets on that Fella vinyl box set?
So it's on Amazon. I know it's from Knitting Factory. I don't know if there are any that are left, but yeah, Ebony, girl, you know, I'll text you. I'll text it to you.
Oh, Ken responded and said he's got her. So.
You know, it's a funny story about Ken. Ken and I have known each other since we were 13. We went to high school together.
Well, that's really beautiful history there. Question from Patrice. Were any of the children you taught Black? How did they relate to you?
So this is interesting. They were Black from an American standpoint, but they were not children who would have considered themselves Black. There are lots of Saudis who are Black. Lots and lots of Saudis who are Black. One of the students, his mother was standing at the front desk, and she looked at me and I looked at her, and she said, "You look like me." And I said, "You look like me too." We looked like we could be cousins, but she was Saudi, but her family lineage had come from Sudan. And her son, she was at the school to have a conference with me because I had mistakenly referred to her son as Sudanese. And she was coming to the school to complain because she did not want her son to be said to be from Africa. She wanted to assert that he was a Saudi because of the way that people of African descent, people with African citizenship were treated in Saudi Arabia. So he looked like my son, and he was somebody that we would call Black, but within Saudi Arabia, he wanted to assert his Saudi identity above anything else. So it was interesting. Some of the students who were Black kind of treated me like, you know, at arm's length, but other students just were really drawn to me. But these were really little kids. They were kindergarten to grade 3. So they weren't really sure of their identity either. So.
And what's beautiful is having you as a role model to see, to strengthen their identity, you know. I lived in Mexico for a couple of years, and there was one little boy who was as dark as me, and they called him Negrito, and you know, I was Morenita, and I was like, hey, you're my brother. And you know, he just had this confidence that this American Black woman was saying that he was my brother. So you being there is definitely something that is critical, and something I think with our whole school system that we need is more role models in our classrooms.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Another question from Patrice. Your story reminds me of community. What tips would you give to people trying to build community in new spaces?
I think it's important to look at ways that people have already built community in the new spaces that you go into. I was trying to build community by standing in the front of the school, welcoming people, but that wasn't a culturally sound practice. Like, women were very much protected and sheltered. So it wasn't cool to sort of be standing outside of the school. Once I learned that, I had to morph into building community in the way that they built community in Saudi Arabia. So I would invite the mothers into my office to sit and have tea. I would never do that in America, but in Saudi Arabia, like, that is a huge thing, like to have tea, to have coffee, to have, you know, a maid or someone come and sit in the office, you know, and don't clean the office, just come and let's sit and let's talk and let's have tea. That was something that I did. So I think it's important that we don't go in with this concept of American exceptionalism when we're in new spaces. If that's overseas, and if it's here, look at the ways that people are already comfortable building community, and then find a way to become a part of that.
That's a really great point. For anything, really, I think a lot of people think in Phoenix there is no Black community, there are no Black people, but really they just need to know where to look. So yeah, we're here, we're out here.
We are. We are here.
So that brings me to a question that I have for you, and I don't see any more coming in, so I think it's a good way to end. Is, you know, the whole story is a platform for Black people and our stories. It's all about expanding Black narratives and telling stories that are relatable but true to Black people and our experience. So what was it about this story that you chose to tell on this platform?
I chose to tell this story, the elements of this story, because I think it's important that we don't tuck our Blackness in. You know, we don't have to try to fit into some type of mold. We come and we break the mold. Like, we set the standard, we set the trend. And that was something that I had forgotten for a while when I first got into Saudi Arabia. So as a Black person, I think wherever we go in the world, we are the trendsetters. We are the trailblazers. And that's something that can be difficult, but there's also just a level of joy in that. There's a level of joy in being able to just be the first one, to be the only one, and just to watch people start to come and rally around you. It's really something beautiful, and it takes a level of courage and resilience. But I really feel like if we have epigenetic trauma, we also have epigenetic joy. And I just absolutely love being Black. And I love sprinkling a little bit of my Black girl magic wherever I go.
Yes, sprinkle it everywhere. That pride, the joy, love it. That's what I'm all about, is celebrating us with our stories, with our hopes, with our dreams, with our failures. It's all of it. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story and everything about you on this platform. I want to know, how can people connect with you if they have fallen in love with you or they just want to get to know you more? And for them to see that photo that you will hopefully post of you as a fellow queen.
Just for you. I'll just post it for you. And I just want to say one thing. Like, I do a lot of storytelling, but the whole story was actually my very first time doing a story where we actually went through a story process of curating the story and presenting the story to a big audience. And I was so nervous. but it is still like, out of all of the shows that I've done, that is still my favorite performance and my favorite setting, because I felt like that was a space that was for us, by us, to us. So thank you for the whole story, because
Yes, thank you.
You already know how I feel about the whole story.
Thank you so much. Yes, each storyteller that is featured on the whole story goes through kind of a rigorous process where either they come to me or I ask them, or someone tells me about them, and we talk about their story. We go through a couple sessions where it's one-on-one, literally, where I'm talking to them about their story and doing some digging, asking questions that are sometimes uncomfortable. I've had a few people cry, men and women. It's amazing. And then we've got a group workshop where everyone can share and kind of work on each other's story together. And then finally, it's the show, which has usually happened at Phoenix Art Museum in the Whiteman Hall. Go figure. It seats a little bit over 300 people, and Angelica did a great job. If you are interested in hearing the version that she told in the hall at Phoenix Art Museum, you can access that story via our SoundCloud, where you can hear the audience laughter, as well as Angelica sharing some more tidbits about being from Detroit. So thank you so much. How can people connect with you?
They can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Village Auntie. They can find me on Facebook. The page is Reclaiming the Village Auntie. Yeah, and I try to post on Instagram fairly regularly. That's probably the most active social media. But yeah, follow me, and maybe I'll post the picture in my stories.
Please, or send it to me and I'll post it. So if you want to learn more about the whole story, get connected with us or connected with me, follow us at The Whole Story Show on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube, and then also subscribe to our newsletter at thewholestoryshow.com. So with that, we're going to end with a little call and response. Y'all know how I like to start the whole story show, so we're going to do that here. So, story. Yes. Thank you all for tuning in to the One-on-One with Angelica Lindsey-Ali. Stay tuned for more opportunities to dig deep into a storyteller and their story.